Welcome to The Last Empire again. Ancient Mysteries Reveal the Future. In this second of our series, we're going to be looking at the prophetic code. Ancient Mysteries Reveal the Future. You remember in our first series, our first program in the series, I should say, we noticed that if you want to know the future, you need to have historical accuracy first of all. It's no good believing in myths and legends. And we saw that the ancient biblical records that were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which contain amazing predictions that deal with not only ancient civilizations, but today and in the near future. These ancient mysteries have a historical accuracy. We saw that from the great archaeologist William F. Albright. Now, in this program, in our series, we need to have a look at, do the biblical prophets have a proven track record of fulfilled predictions? In other words, do they have a batting average of 100%? Or is it like so many psychics, unfortunately, with a batting average we saw of only 16% for the average leading psychic? So what about the biblical prophets? What was their batting average? We're going to see the evidence that they have a proven track record of fulfilled predictions as we move through this program. Let's go first of all again to ancient Egypt. We want to go to the magnificent land of the Nile where we were and also in our last program. Now, I want to take you this time, first of all, to look at the papyrus reed prophecy. This prophecy was made about 700 BC. Now, the papyrus reed once grew prolifically along the shores or the banks of the Nile River. You can see it on the tombs and the temple walls. In fact, it was a great symbol of Lower Egypt in ancient times, the papyrus reed, as you can see on this picture here. Now, the Egyptians also made paper from the papyrus reed. This is where we get the word paper from today. It's from this reed that the ancient Egyptians used to make their paper where they wrote their documents on. They also used the papyrus reed to make their boats as well that sailed the Nile River. So a very important product for the ancient Egyptian peoples indeed. Now let's have a look at what the biblical prophets predicted about this. Let's go to the prophet Isaiah in his 19th chapter. Isaiah the prophet, writing 700 BC, said these words: "The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, shall wither, be driven away, and be no more," said the prophet Isaiah. So there's the prediction. Now, you can travel the length of the Nile River in Egypt today, and you will not find the papyrus reed. It hardly grows in Egypt along the Nile today at all. Yet, if you go over to other countries along that also have the Nile flowing through their countries, you will find the papyrus reed growing there, but not in the Nile, along the Nile in Egypt. It seems to have vanished. And you see the boats winding their way down the river, but this reed has gone. Now, some years ago, Thor Heyerdahl, the great explorer, the man who made that Kon-Tiki boat, you may recall, some years ago in the 60s, some of you will remember that. Thor Heyerdahl came to Egypt looking for papyrus to make a papyrus reed boat like the ancient Egyptians made. Notice what Thor Heyerdahl said when he came here to ancient Egypt. He said, "Pharaoh lies in his tomb with reed boats painted on the stone walls, stone in the desert and reeds on the shore of the Nile." Stone and reeds, he said, were nature's gift to the ancient peoples of the Nile. No papyrus, however, grows in Egypt now. Not a single golden-haired papyrus reed bowed its bushy head over the bank to mirror itself in the brown water. Papyrus had died out in Egypt, says Thor Heyerdahl. No one knew why. The gods had taken back one of their oldest gifts as if they had simply pulled it up by the roots. Now, there's the testimony from Thor Heyerdahl, who went looking for this reed, you see. But the Bible prophets predicted it would be no more growing along the Nile River in Egypt. And today, that's pretty much the situation. You do find a little bit if you come to the Great Cairo Museum in Tahrir Square. there in the middle of Cairo. You'll find some out the front. And I guess they've put it there to remind people of this reed that once grew so prolifically along the banks of the Nile River. So there's a prediction that was made 700 BC and so accurately fulfilled. Let's go to another civilization. Let's come to ancient Babylon, which is in Iraq today. Now, there were many predictions made about the old city of Babylon, which was a fabulous city. And don't miss the next program in our series, because I'm going to take you back to Babylon to see amazing predictions that were fulfilled down through the centuries and even on to our own time today. You're going to see that in our next program. But let's have a look at some of these predictions concerning the old city. Jeremiah the prophet wrote these words in chapter 51, verse 37, "Babylon shall become a heap, a dwelling place for jackals, an astonishment and a hissing without an inhabitant." So it's going to be a heap, says Jeremiah, a heap of ruins. And that's exactly what Babylon is today. When you visit Babylon, as people have been doing for centuries, you will notice it's a heap of ruins. In fact, the ancient people of this area have been taking the stones and the rubble from the old city of Babylon and building more modern constructions down through the centuries. The Bible prophets made a prediction which was exactly fulfilled. There was more. "It will never be inhabited," said the prophet. Nor will it be settled from generation to generation. Nor will the Arabian pitch his tent there. Nor will the shepherds make their sheepfolds there. That's Isaiah the prophet, writing about 700 BC. Now you will notice when you visit Babylon down today that the Arabians don't pitch their tents there and so on. They don't live here in this city like they once did in ancient times. Yet these predictions were made at the time when Babylon was like the great New York or the Washington or the Moscow of its time, the great capital of the ancient world, of the Babylonians. And today it is no more. Now, one more prediction from the prophet Jeremiah. Babylon, he says, "the glory of kingdoms will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, those cities that were destroyed completely. Wild beasts of the desert will lie there, and their houses will be full of owls. Ostriches will dwell there." In other words, the birds will live right here in Babylon. Now, you can visit Babylon today, and you'll notice, as we see here, there's a column there, and at the top of this column, there's a bird's nest. Just as the prophet predicted in this prediction, that's what we find there in Babylon today. You see, Bible prophecies are dependable. They have a proven track record. But let's continue with another great prediction. If you know something about your history of the ancient world, you'll remember Alexander the Great, that great Greek general who led his soldiers across the Mediterranean world around about 320 BC. Now, Alexander the Great was on his way to Egypt. He had just conquered the city of Tyre on the Mediterranean shores, one of the great Phoenician cities, and he was on his way to Egypt. He went by Jerusalem because he was going to destroy Jerusalem. But some of the priests of Israel met him outside the city of Jerusalem to try to get him to change his mind. And this is what they shared with him, an amazing prediction from their biblical prophets. And when Alexander the Great had this prediction shared with him, he decided not to destroy Jerusalem. The priest showed him Daniel chapter 8 at this time. Now, I would remind you that the Dead Sea Scrolls that we saw in our last program contained the book of Daniel as well. In fact,